Where can you find the highest density of billionaires in America? This tiny island right behind me is rapidly laying stake to that claim.
All right, guys, so right over here, we are coming up on Indian Creek, AKA Billionaire's Bunker. This is where they're building Mark Zuckerberg's house.
This is Indian Creek. 41 homes, fewer than 100 residents, its own police force, its own mayor, its own government, a high security radar system, and some of the richest people in America.
The next house we're going to run up on is going to be Jeff Bezos'. He actually typically flies in on a helicopter, lands on a barge. That boat pulls up to that barge, he gets out of the helicopter onto that boat. And that's how he makes it home.
But a few miles away from this island, we found a very different Florida.
I'm so against the wall with inflation, with higher rents, with higher insurance. It's pushing me now against the corner. It's inevitable with time. I'm going to lose my businesses.
As California and New York are weighing raising taxes on the ultra-wealthy, billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Palantir's Alex Karp, Sergey Brin, and hedge fund manager Ken Griffin have all flocked to Florida.
The only decision that we've made with no regrets in the last few days is to expand the size of our office footprint in our new Miami headquarters.
In reaction to New York?
In reaction to New York.
Citadel, the financial firm that Griffin founded and runs, employs hundreds of people in Miami. And other major companies have followed: Palantir, McKinsey, Wells Fargo.
This wealth tax is having a huge impact on people fleeing to Florida.
We need to double down on our bet in Miami. We want to be in a state that embraces business.
We wanted to ask a question that seems to be left out of the conversation entirely. What happens when large numbers of wealthy people actually do move to a low-tax state? And if this model works so well, why isn't everyone benefiting?
I cannot afford Florida anymore.
We wanted to a state where people wanted to move. We wanted to a state where it was inexpensive to live.
Welcome to Florida. If you want to come, have fun with these high-ass prices. Motherfuckers charge $1 million to live in the hood. What's going on?
What is going on? I spoke to small business owners, workers, luxury real estate agents, lawmakers, and journalists to answer that question.
The people that are benefiting the most, the millionaires and billionaires, obviously.
Why do you think, though, those millionaires and billionaires are coming down?
You know, you get cut on taxes. I mean, who wouldn't want that?
So let's dig into it. For decades, Florida sold a dream. Sunshine, low taxes, lots of opportunity. A place where ordinary people could buy a home, raise a family, or retire.
Now you need the sunshine and sea breeze, soft sand and palm trees.
We love it. What you get here is so far above, at the same price level that you would get up north. I think it's great.
It's the dream that brought my family here from Puerto Rico when I was a kid. And that's us in the playground. For most of my life, it felt attainable. But then COVID hit, and everything changed.
As we learn how widespread the virus is, Governor Ron DeSantis is working on reopening Florida.
While much of the country was shut down, Florida marketed itself as open for business.
The state of Florida, we probably are the most open big state in the country.
And people came, lots of them. Before long, you had wealthy transplants competing for homes in a state where wages and housing supply haven't kept up. What kinds of buyers are coming here?
A lot of New Yorkers, a lot of Northeast, a lot of California.
Mindy Sapinick is a real estate agent in Palm Beach County, and she's had a front row seat to all of it.
Now, with all these new buildings, they're starting at like 1.9 million, but they're luxurious.
For
it's
a
not,
condo.
yeah, for just a condo, a two-bedroom condo.
A two-bedroom condo for $1.9 million?
Yes, yes. You've got the powder room here, which is stunning, with a full bath over here. It's very spacious. And then you have a gigantic terrace.
Seems like luxury is going up everywhere. The share of million-dollar homes in South Florida has jumped dramatically since the pandemic. But the pressures are not just at the top. Florida is now the least affordable state for renters, and it has some of the nation's highest property insurance rates and fees.
A lot of people are getting kind of forced out.
Priced out.
Yes.
But driving around Palm Beach is another world. This is where Ken Griffin is building a $1 billion estate near Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Just south of that, Mindy takes me to a seaside town lined with mega mansions, home to people like Larry Ellison and Sean Hannity.
I'm going to show you guys a house that's on the market for $72,500,000.
What a deal.
Yes. Yes, and you can have it today for probably just $72.
When we got there, they told us we could only film outside. Luckily, someone else had already filmed the tour. 11 bedrooms and 13 and a half bathrooms, with a master bathroom bigger than many New York apartments. Marble floors and a grand piano, and an air-conditioned garage that fits 5 cars.
Oh, this is how the other half lives.
Oh, there's not half. This isn't even the 1%. It's a tiny fraction of a fraction. And the gap between this world and the ones most Floridians live in is growing.
It's become a bit harder because everything of like bills, like you need to pay up, get more higher, your paycheck just stays the same or just go up like $1.
According to recent data, nearly half of all Floridians live paycheck to paycheck. Even some Republican lawmakers are starting to say this out loud.
If you look at Naples, if you look at Palm Beach, even some of the areas in Miami, the poor are having and middle class are having a hard time. This can't go on.
I've seen different cycles in the city. My employees, where my barber, where the delivery guys, more and more said we can't afford to live here anymore.
Alex Ringlev is a restaurant owner who's lived in Miami for more than 25 years. Watching the city change around him, he started posting about it online.
We made it to last in affordable housing.
And something unexpected happened.
I'm receiving hundreds and thousands of messages in my DM. Everybody is telling me the same story. And it's people that are really about to be homeless. A reality has kicked in. The majority of our residents are struggling. We have 54% of our population is house burdened.
House burdened means when you spend more than 30% of your income on housing. And the people feeling that the most, they're leaving.
It's true, there's people moving here, but the ones that are moving in are making like double the income what the current residents get.
Statewide, for every 10 people who move in, about 9 leave. And they aren't just snowbirds looking for a change of scenery. They're young workers, families, retirees, and the service workers the state's entire tourism industry depends on.
I saw Ken Griffin's interview on Fortune, and he was talking about Miami and how Miami is going to be the next wealth capital. He did mention that Miami's infrastructure didn't keep up with this growth. So I reach out, ask him, what does he think about the city that is suffering now?
Did he respond?
No, zero.
We reached out to Ken Griffin's office to ask about his vision for the city. We didn't get a response. To be fair, Ken Griffin has put his money where his mouth is. But Griffin isn't just building a business here. He's making an argument that low taxes and light regulations are what businesses need to thrive. A bet that sharply contrasts with what New York and California are now considering. One thing worth noting, Griffin moved his business to Florida in 2022, long before a wealth tax was on the table in those states. So the idea that he was fleeing a wealth tax seems to have become a convenient narrative. But on the surface, the bet he and others like him are making appears to be paying off. Since 2020, the state's GDP has jumped from $1 trillion to $1.7 trillion. That puts Florida among the 15 largest economies in the world.
We're #1 economy, #1 higher ed, #1 education freedom.
But Miami, Tampa, Orlando, among Florida's largest cities, still rank among the bottom 5 of the 25 largest U.S. metros in median household income. So where is all this growth going? To answer that, you have to look at not just how much it's growing, but how working class Floridians are being left out of that growth.
Hey, Natasha, it's great
I went to meet with Florida Representative Anna Escamani, who sits on the legislature's tax committee, to explain the numbers. On paper, it looks like Florida's booming. What's missing from this picture?
Well, that growth is really centralized in a select few. It's not felt by everyday Floridians. You know, we're known to have a very service-driven economy, which essentially translates to minimum wage jobs.
Florida has no income tax, no capital gains tax, and no estate tax or inheritance tax. So the state raises money another way, through sales taxes, property taxes, fees, and insurance costs. And those taxes hit working people the hardest.
This is why we're known to have a regressive tax structure. Someone who makes less ends up paying more of their annual income than those who make more.
How much more? Let's look at the effective tax rate. That's the percentage of income you actually pay in taxes after deductions and loopholes. In Florida, the bottom 20% of earners pay more than 5 times as high as the top 1%. In other words, the poorest Floridians pay $13 out of every $100 they earn in state and local taxes, while the wealthiest pay less than $3. So yeah, Florida is a low-tax state if you're rich. And what you get for that money isn't so great either.
The irony is that we're known as a low-tax state, we're also a low-benefit state. So you don't have public transportation, you don't have strong Medicaid systems, disability services, you don't have an ability to save costs in other ways.
Florida also ranks among the worst states for mental health funding, pre-K funding, teacher salaries, and unemployment benefits.
It's not a system that is not working. I mean, unfortunately, it is working. It's working exactly how it was intended.
A tax code can widen the gap between rich and poor, or narrow it. So to understand what's happened in Florida, you have to follow the taxes.
There has been a very intentional effort over the last, I would say 30 years, essentially coinciding with like total Republican control of state government, to reorient the tax code away from wealthy people and onto working class people.
This is Jason Garcia. He's an investigative reporter that covers tax policy and corporate influence in Florida. Not only does Florida have no state income tax, it eliminated a tax that the wealthy would pay on things like stocks and bonds, and very few businesses here pay corporate income tax at all.
It's trickle-down economics, right? It is the same answer you've been getting since the 1980s. You'll hear out of the legislature that if we cut tax for our job creators, it will trickle down to working class folks. What it really is a big chunk of it is a reflection of the influence of campaign contributions and lobbying.
In Florida, billionaires through campaign cash, lobbyists, and think tanks have backed laws that weaken worker protections, privatize more of the public sphere. They've even advocated to roll back child labor laws and shift more costs and risks onto ordinary people, all while protecting their own bottom line. And when it comes to campaign contributions, Ken Griffin is in a league of his own.
He has single-handedly written 6-figure, 7-figure checks to individual politicians. Like going into this session, he gave $1 million each to the House and Senate Republican caucuses.
That money has consequences for how the state is run, who it serves, and who it doesn't.
The joke for the longest time has been that Florida's economy is essentially a Ponzi scheme. It requires just never-ending growth, population growth to pay for itself.
And that's the paradox. The very people that Florida depends on to keep growing are increasingly the ones who can't afford to stay. A Florida Atlantic University poll from late 2025 found that nearly half of all Floridians had considered leaving the state because of the cost of living.
We already had a labor shortage right now in Dade County, and this is expected to grow. Who is going to be the receptionist at the luxury building? Who's going to do the valet? Who's going to be the housekeeper? Who's going to be the nanny? Even the most wealthy will be affected by not having the services that they want.
We end the story where we started, on a boat tour of a luxury island most Floridians will never step foot on. Florida real estate consultant Peter Zalewski told me this island was built in a land boom of the 1920s. A century later, Florida is in another one.
The focus of governmental leaders is to bend the knee at those with the money. It's effectively the Gilded Age Part 2. That's what we're living through.
Florida is what the low tax promise looks like up close. But before other states rush to copy it, it's worth asking, do we really want Florida serving as the tax and budget model for the whole country? Or are there better examples to emulate? Massachusetts raised taxes on the ultra-rich and saw revenue grow as its millionaire population kept rising. They used that revenue to fund tuition-free community college and affordable public transportation. In New York, Mamdani and Hochul are raising taxes in service of expanding free public childcare. And if California's wealth tax passes, the revenue would be used to expand Medicaid coverage. Now, Florida can't pass a wealth tax because its constitution forbids it, but it could close corporate loopholes, build affordable housing, stop making working class people subsidize a tax system designed for the wealthy. These aren't radical ideas, and ultimately, a patchwork system of state taxes could be replaced with policy at the federal level. Congress could pass something like the bill Bernie Sanders introduced, which would levy a 5% annual tax on the net worth of America's billionaires.
How can we invest in our city? How can we get everybody on the table? How can we help the people that really need it? How can we create the wealth for everybody. Because like I said, it's in everybody's interest.
Because a rising tide is supposed to lift all boats, not just the yachts. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If you want to support our journalism so that we can create more videos like this one, join our membership program to get exclusive perks and members-only content. And if you have a tip, email us at stories@perfectunion.us.